Okay, let's take a look at question 6 from February of 2009. It's a straight corporations question. Of course, you won't know that while the bar exam is going on. But let's take a look at the cause of the question. Number 1, under what theory or theories might SI attempt to avoid its contractual obligation to GP? What is the likelihood of success? So SI avoid contract with GP. So they want to avoid their contract with GP. First thing I think about, because don't forget, I don't know if this is corporations when I start the bar exam. I would think misrepresentation or fraud would probably be the best way to avoid a contract, because you can always get the contract rescinded under those two theories. And it turns out not to be a contractual thing. I mean, it's contracts, but it's couched in corporations. But a lot of these subjects have a lot of things in common. I'm just thinking out loud, don't forget. Has Charlie violated any duties to SI as to the smaller mall? Charlie, I don't know who Charlie is yet. Duties, well, he's going to either be a lawyer, a trustee, or an officer or director, because those are the people that generally have fiduciary duties. Trustees, executors, lawyers, directors, officers. Okay. Duties to SI, smaller mall. Might be 2 malls in here. Okay. And number 3. Under what theory or theories might Al and Betty, move number 3 over here, Al and Betty attempt to oust Charlie from the board of directors? Okay. What's the likelihood of success with that? All right. Interesting cause of the question, not really understanding. I know there's some kind of fiduciary duty here. I know we have board of directors here, so I'm starting to see that it's corporations. And one of the corporations wants to avoid its contract with another corporation. I don't exactly understand how that's going to work right now. You'll figure it out in a second. Okay. SI, Stage Incorporated, is a properly formed closed corporation. So first of all, it's properly formed as de jure. And the examiners are telling you that because they're not testing formation on this essay. And it's a closed corporation, which means it's owned by relatively few people. There's no ready market for the shares. It's not a national exchange. And all shareholders in a closed corporation have fiduciary duties towards each other because of the fact that there's no ready market for the shares. If you don't like something that someone else is doing, you can't just dump your shares like you could on a nationally public traded company. So that's why the members of a closed corporation, shareholders, have fiduciary duties to each other, whereas shareholders generally don't have duties to other shareholders. SI's articles of incorporation include the following provision. Pay attention to any language that's in quotes. It's pretty important. SI is formed for the sole purpose of operating comedy clubs. SI has a 3-member board of directors. Okay, so now we know SI has some board of directors, and they are A, B, I see, perfect. None of whom is a shareholder. Okay, so the shareholders, we don't know who they are. We know the shareholders own the company, and A, B, and C is the directors. Okay, so we have shareholders and we have the directors right there. All right, moving on. So some time ago, Charlie persuaded, now Charlie's one of the directors, Al and Betty, they're all directors, that SI should expand into a new business direction. Okay, because their whole purpose is for operating these unfunny comedy clubs that apparently nobody goes to and nobody's laughing at. That's why they're trying to go into different areas. So that they should expand into a new business direction, real estate development. Okay, so they're going outside the scope of their business purpose. And shareholders, when they invest in certain companies, they're investing for a reason. They're investing, obviously, in comedy clubs because the shareholders believe that this is a wise investment. Whether or not it is or it's not is irrelevant. So now Charlie wants to get the board of directors to take this company in a different direction. You're going to be outside the scope of your corporate dude, I mean, you're formed for a limited purpose. And now I'm seeing how we're going to get into like ultra virus acts beyond the scope of the business purpose. And that's why they told us the corporation has a very limited scope. The board approved, unless may not have been in good faith, because, well, that has to do with the new business direction, okay? After heated discussions, the board approved and entered into a contract with Great Properties, a construction company committing substantial SI capital, yikes, to the construction of a new shopping mall, which is set to break ground shortly. Okay, whoops. So they're getting into a different type of business. Now, the Articles of Incorporation limit SI's purpose to comedy clubs. Now, the board members have the authority to bind SI, but now they've acted beyond the scope of their power. So this is a ultra-virus act. Now, the thing about ultra-virus acts is it means outside the scope. Well, GP, they have no reason to know this. And if they did, well, then we might be able to enjoin the transaction and rescind it. That's what the shareholders would want to do. But if GP had no knowledge of it, and there's no facts pointing in that direction, how can SI avoid the contract with GP? Well, focus, did GP do anything wrong? The answer is no. So they're not going to be able to avoid it because they acted outside the scope of their, I mean, they knew they were acting outside their scope and they still did it, and now they want to get out of it. They're not going to be able to get out of it. But don't forget, you're playing with the shareholders' money and the directors did the action. So that's not fair to the shareholders. So what can they do? They can sue the directors and hold the directors personally liable, because one of the remedies for when the directors approve an act that's outside the corporation's purpose is they can be held personally liable, and that's exactly what the shareholders will probably want to do. However, SI will not be able to avoid its contractual obligations by saying, hey, you know what, we goofed up. We weren't supposed to do this. We knew we weren't supposed to do it, so we did it anyways, and we're going to hold you liable. That's not going to work. So for the ultra-virus activities, no escape, because the other party didn't know, and A, B, and C will be held personally liable to the shareholders if they lost any money. Of course, if they made money, they're going to go to the shareholders anyways, and the shareholders aren't going to complain in that situation. Okay. All right. So I'll keep going. This is still part of the call number one. Although Charlie remained enthusiastic, Al and Betty changed their mind about the decision to expand beyond SI's usual business. SI was struggling financially to keep its comedy clubs open. Okay, so the company's not doing very well. They don't have a lot of money on hand, and now they realize we should not have entered into this transaction with GP, and they lacked the financial ability to really enter into any more transactions, especially large ones or real estate development. So Al and Betty decided to avoid their contract with GP, which makes SI in breach, in order to devote all of their capital to its comedy clubs. But here's the thing, they're not going to be able to avoid an undesirable contract on the ground that they weren't without the authority to make it, because they represented they had the authority to make it, and there's no reason why GP would have any reason to believe otherwise. And if you look, interestingly enough, calls of the question, the first three paragraphs go to call 1. The paragraph after that goes to call 2, and the last paragraph goes to call 3. And if you look at here, Ryan puts the, zooms in a little bit, you'll notice how this happens very, very often, where the examiners will break the essay up. Instead of looking at it as a full essay, I look at it as just 3 mini essays, call number 1 being the most important, then call 2, and call 3 the least important, because look how much facts. You have 3 paragraphs that go to call 1, 1 paragraph that goes to call 2, and 1 paragraph that goes to call 3, and they're all in order. Examiners there's no tricks on the bar exam. That's the most interesting thing. People think the examiner's always trying to trick you. It's like, oh, if it's too easy. If it's too easy, it is. This stuff is not that difficult. You put too much pressure on yourself sometimes to be perfect. You just want to be good. You just want to discuss it and understand how these concepts work. Okay, moving along. Last month, GP approached Charlie about another real estate matter, project they had under development. GP was building a smaller mall. And don't forget, call 2 only deals with the smaller mall. on the other side of town and was seeking investors. Aware that Al and Betty were unhappy about the earlier contract with GP, not only were Al and Betty unhappy about it, they rescinded the contract. There was a heated discussion. Clearly, they don't want anything to do with this. Charlie believed that SI's board would not approve any further real investments in real estate. And I think that's a pretty good assessment by Charlie. I mean, why would you bring this up to them? And this has to do with the duty of loyalty with usurping a corporate opportunity. Duty of loyalty. Because they're asking what kind of duties did he violate, and there's only two duties, the duty of loyalty and the duty of care. Might have violated the duty of care in the first instance, but they're asking about the smaller mall, not about the duty of care with that. So did he breach the duty? Let's talk about the usurping a corporate opportunity. So Alan Betty, okay, as we know with call 2, Charlie believed that the SI board would not approve any further investments in real estate. As a result, Charlie decided to invest his own money in the endeavor without mentioning the project to anyone at SI. Had he mentioned it, what do you think would have happened? Well, let's take a look at it. Has he taken an opportunity away from the company that rightfully belongs to them and profit at his own, at their expense? Well, their business purpose is for comedy clubs, not real estate. So this is not closely related to their SI's line of business. Also, they weren't expecting any real estate deals. They weren't looking for any real estate deals. They weren't really looking to expand in that market. In fact, Charlie's the only one who wanted to do so, but the rest of the board of directors, the rest of the board, not only didn't want to, they've also breached their contract with the same party that that Charlie's about to enter into a contract with, which I'm surprised GP's even dealing with him. They may like him, but they may not think much about Al and Betty, because Al and Betty decided to avoid the contract with GP, and if I was GP, I'd be a little bit upset about that. Another thing, too, is they've already devoted all their capital to the comedy club, and they don't have any more money to buy any real estate. So if Charlie would have brought this to the company to approve, here, I'll give you guys first crack at this, would they have really done anything? So is he really taking a corporate opportunity? It's not in their line of business. It's not part of their corporate purpose. They weren't expecting anything from it. And they've already breached once. After heated discussions, they agreed to the first contract, which they ended up getting out of. And the last thing is they lacked the financial ability to get into it. So he did not take a corporate opportunity and divert it from the company to himself. And also GP approached Charlie. We don't know if he was approached in his personal capacity or in his capacity as a director. In terms of the duty of care, I don't think that he has breached his duty of care because he didn't do anything that was harmful to the corporation in regards to the smaller mall, may have breached a duty in terms of entering into the ultra-virus activity, but they're not asking about that. Call 2 is not asking about that. They're only asking about his duty of care to the smaller mall, and I don't see how he didn't act in the corporation's best interest because he knew full well the corporation could not take advantage of the opportunity. And finally, meanwhile, the last paragraph, Al and Betty have come to suspect that Charlie has been skimming corporate funds for his personal activities. They have no proof, they just suspect. And although they have little proof, they want to oust Charlie as a director. So how do they get him out? Do the directors have the authority to throw out other directors? The answer is no. They have to let the shareholders know, and the shareholders can call a special meeting. The shareholder, Charlie, will be able to present his proof. Al and Betty will give their side, and the shareholders will ultimately vote on it. And if the shareholders want to remove him for cause, they're always entitled to do so, but we need a shareholder vote. A special meeting will be called. But I'll tell you one thing, Al and Betty won't be able to oust Charlie themselves. A majority of the board of directors can't get rid of another board member. They have to present it to the shareholders, and that's to be a majority of the shareholders. Because don't forget, shareholders own the company. They own these guys. These guys, if I own the company, I can't have my employees firing each other, especially when they're all on the same level, unless I give one of them the authority to. But if I have 3 directors, I'm the one who's going to decide who's coming and going, not them. And that's how that works. So, call number 1, it says, Under what theory might SI attempt to avoid its contractual obligation? And that would be an ultra-virus act, because it was formed for the sole purpose of operating comedy clubs, but they entered into a real estate contract, so they were in breach. But only the board's in breach. It's not going to be. It's not the fault of GP. It's the board of directors' fault. They're going to have to answer to the shareholders. So when I think of ultra-virus activities, I think of more of an internal matter, and it has nothing to do with GP. So they're not going to be able to avoid their contract. As for Charlie violating any duties as to the smaller mall, did he usurp a corporate opportunity, meaning did he breach his duty of loyalty? And the answer is probably not. The corporation did not have the financial ability. They had no investments. They had no capital. They already had a heated discussion about it before. They breached their contract with GP, which GP probably doesn't want to deal with them anymore. Because the capital was already devoted to its unfunny comedy clubs and it wasn't in their line of business and they were struggling financially. And they were unable to accept the opportunity. So I don't think Charlie breached his fiduciary duty of loyalty. In terms of what theory might Alan Betty attempt to oust Charlie from the board of directors? Now, shareholders may remove a director at any time with cause. And directors do not have the power to remove each other. They have to have a special meeting called by the shareholders. And that's what Alan Betty will likely have to do, notify the shareholders of their suspicion and let the shareholders make the ultimate decision. And there you go. That is it. That's a wrap for question 6 from 2009 February. Thanks for listening.